50 years on the Irish market.
Hello again, and you're very welcome to another Louth County Matters coming to you from the Milma Museum in Drogheda. Coming up in this week's show, we join local tour guide Liam Macaulay on a walking tour in Dundalk. We meet furniture maker Joe Lawler and see some of his amazing work. We join Anthony Kinahan at one of his drama classes in Dromiskin, and finally we meet craft maker Mel Bradley in Drogheda. So first up, Niamh went along to Dundalk to check out Louth walking tours.
So Liam, where are you going to take us this morning?
Well, Niamh, you're very welcome to Dundalk. Here we are today in the Market Square. Just behind me you can see the new fountain, which is part of the recreation of the town centre, something to bring it back into being the centre of the community. But besides people using here, there are many things people walk past every day of the week here, which are not necessarily something that they know all the stories about. So what I want to do is bring you around, show you where these are, tell you some of the stories about them, and see what comes out of it.
Well, this sounds very interesting. Let's get going.
Thank you.
Liam, this is very striking sculpture.
This is the Rhythm and Rhyme, created by a local sculptor, Sandra Bell from the townland of Killen, just outside the town. Very distinctive in the style that she does, with this mixture of sort of bronze art. Created to commemorate the visit of an American president. Bill Clinton came here on the 12th of December 2000. Part of the peace process, just congratulating everybody on their achievements up to that time, which had made such a difference and still making such a difference to the people of this area. So when you look at the monument itself, Sandra describes her work as describing the spirit of humanity through bronze. It certainly does that. But on the day, Bill Clinton was also presented with a hand-sized version of this as a paperweight for his own office work, and perhaps it's now in the Clinton Museum.
Liam, this is a very elegant memorial to Dundalk's more recent history.
Yeah, in many ways, something born out of tragedy, and there were so many tragedies during the Troubles. But if there's a favourite monument that I have in the town here, this is really it, the Free Spirit Monument. Sadly, it was a memorial to two men who lost their lives in a bombing here just before Christmas in 1975. And like many who lost their lives in sort of cross-border areas throughout Northern Ireland, well, they left families behind, they left a lot of connections behind there, and they're all remembered in some way or other. But the commemoration that was created here was just that wee bit special. We had Jack Rooney, who's the fireman here in Dundalk. And we see here on one side of it, the part of the fireman's pole, or the fireman's ladder, lifting it from there. And Hugh Waters, who was a tailor. And just that aspect of those personalities, if any of us can be classified by what we work at, you know, that this is remembered, that these two men are remembered in this way, and the doves of peace sort of flying along there. Well, peace eventually came. What more can be said? Every time I walk past here, I think, well, at least those men have been remembered well, and it's a beautiful, beautiful memorial. This is St Patrick's Cathedral in Dundalk. A unique structure. Bear in mind that in the 1800s, from 1829 onwards, there was a huge expanse of church building right throughout Ireland. Here in Dundalk, the cathedral was built under the inspiration of King's College in Cambridge in England. That was the exterior. The interior was Exeter Cathedral. So it was to make an impact. This was where Catholicism in Ireland had reached. This was sort of something now that was worthy of respect in the community, which up to that time had none. The building started here in 1837, so not that long after the Act of Emancipation with Daniel O'Connell. But the building continued then right through to 1848. By the time all the bits and pieces were finished. In fact, the official opening was in 1842 when Daniel O'Connell himself appeared here for Mass, but as part of his tour of the country where he was having these Mass rallies. So to attend here at Mass to show that he was part of this congregation as well was very important, not just to the church itself, but to his image as he sort of went to these Mass rallies. There was a story that on his journeys, while he was known as the Liberator, the liberation can mean an awful lot of things. People once said that you could throw a stone over any wall in the country and hit one of his children.
Liam, this is well known as Kelly's Monument or Kelly's Memorial. What's the history behind it?
Well, Niamh, all this is about a shipwreck, but in many ways, the other side of the story is a story of heroism that in many ways we just wouldn't be familiar with in today's terms at all. The actual event itself was around a hurricane that struck here in April of 1858. But what happened was that a ship that was on its way from Alexandria in Egypt to Glasgow with a cargo of cotton, a sail ship, obviously in the windy conditions, the rough conditions, made for a safe harbour and dropped anchor over near Blackrock in Dundalk Bay. The storm was that fierce that while people were keeping an eye out for it on the first evening, by the following morning it had actually pulled its anchors and been pulled right across to out of Soldiers Point there at the end of the Navy Bank. So what they tried to do was create a rescue for these. In the course of that, men went out in rowing boats for hours, trying to row against the current, the tide, the wind, to try and reach the stricken ship. Some had to turn back in just sheer exhaustion from physical tiredness, from the cold, from the conditions. Eventually, Captain James Kelly of the Dundalk Steam Company, with his crew, managed to get out there. But just as they were about to touch the ship, the boat turned over. Kelly had gone out there in his long sea boots, heavy coat to protect himself against the environment. Once he went into the water, he was lost. The other men were rescued almost immediately, but succumbed to the cold and died. A total, between the rescuers and the crew of the ship, a total of 9 died. So this is the memorial that was eventually created to them years later. The initial fund that was used, James Kelly's mother actually asked that rather than creating a memorial, look, there are families to be raised here, use the money for looking after them. And by the time that the children were of an age to have finished their education and gained employment, there was a little bit of money that was left over. And Mrs. Kelly at that time says, look, okay, let's put up a nice memorial, and this is what we have today.
Incredible woman.
It's amazing, all of the history right here on our own doorstep, and we only touch on a very small part of that tour. So next up, it's furniture maker Joe Lawler. When it comes to architectural furniture, there's no better man to tell us what it's all about than furniture maker Joe Lawler. So Joe, can you tell us, how long have you been making furniture and what got you started?
It's a long time ago. I have, the last time I worked in Dublin was 1984, so it's a good few years. And before that I would have worked for my father and served my time.
So your father was a furniture maker, and so that's how you really got into it?
Yeah, that's it, the start. Chair maker. He didn't call himself a chair, but he was a chair maker.
So tell us a bit about the type of furniture that you make and talk us through the process of making it.
It would be solid Irish wood if we could get a story to it as well. But it would be wood, sometimes metal, sometimes stone involved. But the process would be, I suppose we would buy it in a very rough state. Then we would plane it up, sand it, make something out of it in the end. That's better than it was, I hope.
And where do you source the wood that you use?
Locally, there's a place not by that where we would get solid wood. And there's a place locally, lately I've heard of a place in Wicklow. But there's places everywhere, all around Ireland.
And I believe that you have quite a high-profile fan in the form of former President Bill Clinton. That's amazing, Joe. He actually commissioned you to make a piece for him. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, a guy named Sean Kennedy, one of the Kennedys, with his, what do you call it, hair all done, arrived in the workshop and picked one in the hall first, but hadn't got 6. He was looking for 6 of chairs, and he came into the workshop then. We had chairs sitting the back wall, not put together or anything, made from cedar. So that was the only option really he had. So we built up one and got him to sit on it. And he had a suit and everything, and he was very dusty at the end of it. But he said he kept saying he wanted it higher, so I would put a little bit of plywood and he would sit and he'd just get dustier. And he said Bill Clinton was quite high. So when he was happy, he said, that's okay, he wanted it next Tuesday. So anyway, we got there.
And how did it feel making something for Bill Clinton?
You were on a different planet. But it was just something different.
So Joe, what do you see in the future for furniture makers here in Ireland?
Classes, I think, is a good thing. I have people coming to class. I had the local schools send their students down, and it's very good. They're learning more on for me, so I'm handing it on really.
And what would somebody typically make in a class that they come to?
Chairs. Mostly chairs. It's just what I know, and it's easy. But I've only started it over the last couple of years, so I find it very easy to make chairs.
And can anyone come to a class then?
Yeah, adults, children, wherever. I think it's 12-year-old. I'm not insured for anybody under 12, but up to 90, it doesn't matter, or 100. But yeah, and they enjoy the classes. Yeah. 6 week course.
Beautiful architectural pieces there from Joe. So that's it for part 1. See you in part 2 for some hand-painted scarves and some drama teaching.
The Gum Strut. Bin it your way and step away from €150 gum litter fine.
Westward Scania are the Irish distributor for the Scania range of trucks, bus and coach, marine and industrial engines. Scania trucks are the leading heavy truck range in Ireland. Every Scania truck, bus and coach is individually tailored to the customer's requirement. Scania. Class-leading reliability, fuel economy and driver comfort for almost 40 years on the Irish market.
Northwest Alarm Systems, the #1 security